Welcome in to another episode of the My Two Bits Gators Football Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Ben, joined as always by your other host, Mr. Randy. Randy, how are you feeling? How are things in the land of the Ville of G?
B, my man, it's highly palpable. Um, it's interesting, right? We think that one coach is a shoe-in, the other one's a fit-in, another one the door was shut. Well, probably two of the doors were shut. So I guess now we're in the limbo line, right? We're just waiting to see if we can get under the bar and not fall backwards on our rear ends and make sure we can finish out the season with a little bit of pride, a little bit of fight. So, especially with what happened over the weekend in Baton Rouge,
I was about to
that
say, and try
obviously.
not to get Bayou'd along the way.
Exactly. That's going to throw in a different element, regardless of the fact. But it's just wild to see what's taken place this college football year, to see NIL in more than full effect. What's happened with rosters, what's happened with records, what's happened with coaches and the record buyouts. It is just absolute pandemonium, my man. I think there's no other way to describe it other than that.
Pandemonium is a good word. Read an article saying that we've set a record, even with the discounted buyout for Brian Kelly, which is still mind blowing to me that he took a
Yes.
$27 million haircut on his buyout. Don't understand that at all, but we'll move along. And even with that, we are still over the record set in 2023 for buyouts, and it's October. And that was a full year record, by the way. So yeah, it's October. Yeah,
Yeah.
crazy. So
About that.
moving along. Agenda for tonight going to be a little different. We are doing our bye-week agenda, but a little modified from in years past, since we have some different things going on with the team. You might be aware. You might be aware
Hmm.
that things are a little different. So we're going to mix up the agenda a little bit, cover some of the things we've done for this bye-week pod in previous years, being the midweek, the mid-year bye week, if you will. We kind of had a standard agenda for this, and we've kept to some of that, but we've also changed some of it. So let's get into it. Without further ado, as always, our intro, our mission, our accuracy disclaimer, our vision, and our agenda. Our mission is to provide factual analysis of all things Florida Gator football. Our information will be accurate to the best of our possible ability. We will cite our sources whenever we use them, and all statistical data comes from either ESPN or stats.ncaa.org. Recruiting data, which we don't have any of tonight, comes from on3.com, and that is, of course, our accuracy disclaimer. Our vision is to have unfiltered conversation around the product on the field, as well as recruiting and overall coaching decisions. Our analysis will be based on review of film, and while we will express opinion, that opinion should always be based in some form of fact. We will also evaluate strategy and tactics and discuss observation of player personnel decisions as well as on-field execution. Okay, so agenda for tonight. We're going to talk briefly about the state of the program and where we see that being currently. And kind of how that compares to the last time we had a mid-season change in coaching, or during the season change in coaching, I guess I should say. And then we'll talk about the first 7 games and look at some baseline numbers. And we want to do that so that we can have a baseline to evaluate how the rest of the season goes. So we'll get into that. Look at both offense and defense for those numbers. We'll then look at the offensive staff changes and what opportunities those present. So that should be interesting to kind of have a little discussion around. We will then, of course, talk about some of the new coaching opportunities, really just one in particular at the time. Might get into other ones in the future, but for now, we're just going to focus on one. And then, of course, we will talk our midseason superlatives. So this is something we've done every year for this episode. Make our picks for the rest of the season, play keep it or pitch it for Georgia this upcoming weekend, and review the Sims results from that game as well. And then from there, we will wrap things up and sign it off. So with that, let's get started. Give me your thoughts on the current state of the program. Where are we with this midseason coaching change versus the previous one? Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, so this is a loaded question. I mean, unlike the State of the Union, I don't think I need 2.5 hours for this. But
Let's hope not.
regard yeah, regardless of the fact, one thing I think one of the things I think is interesting is I'll take it from the perspective of how Dan Mullen lost this team. So
Yep.
in Dan Mullen's years here, of course, those of you that know, he was fired towards the end of the season, given the option to stay on to coach a couple of games, one of them being Senior Day, one of them being Florida State. And of course, he just said, I'm out. I'm done. I'm good. But at the end of the day, that last season, it was pretty tough at a 5-6 record at the time of Mullins firing. So a lot of issues there. Of course, I don't have to say it too loud, but LSU, there was that issue. There was an issue of dressing up as Darth Vader on Halloween. A lot of different things, right? Also, when you look at the recruiting numbers, did Dan Mullen have terrible recruiting numbers? Not necessarily, but they were still in the teens, whereas your Georgias, whereas various schools, of course, Alabama, they were near the top, if not the top of the country, hence why they were as strong as they were with talent. The other thing that we noticed with Mullen's tenure is the fact that at the end of his tenure, he had some very tumultuous relationships with his coordinators. Notably, um, there was a several documents with his coordinators that were supposed to be their contracts that were supposed to be re-signed, but for whatever reason, when he left, those documents were not reviewed, and his coordinators were left hanging out to dry. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that just shows you how he left the state of this program. Was not in the best of terms. Recruiting was not where it should have been. The talent composite was not there, and we were losing ground with the Georgias, with the Alabamas, so on and so forth. And you had a very disjointed program, so there was a lot to be done. Here is a different situation. Now, the record does not reflect it. We know this. We've talked about
No,
this
it does
ad.
not.
I just there's no more else to say about it. However, when you look at Billy, we believe he had the best interest in Florida football in the sense of as a person, like the human element, voting for Billy Napier, the human, you wanted him to succeed, right? Everything that he did to take systems from Clemson and Dabo and Nick Saban, the dark Sith Lord at Alabama, everything he did to take some of those systems, those processes, right? And bring them to Florida, he did, right? When you look at GatorMade, right? The program to help develop student athletes. When you look at the infrastructure and the staff, of course, the picture the infamous picture that showed more staff than players. The completion of the Heavener training complex, that was more so Scott Strickland, but of course, that was one of the things that Billy used heavily in his recruiting. The strong NIL infrastructure in the front office, the Hawkins Education Center, the Condren Dining Center with regards to nutrition and health, right? So there's a lot of different things that aided in this program right now having the strength that it has from, as we talked about before, culture as well as recruiting. Yes, recruiting has gotten better at Florida. Have we bridged the gaps with your Georgias and especially notably Tennessee and Alabama? Not there, but we were gaining ground. And that's the other thing. When you look at the field, the talent that was put on this field this year, as we mentioned, on paper, the best roster assembled in at least a decade. So much so that a lot of pundits and sports reporters have mentioned Florida is a program that a offensive minded coach, an aggressive coach can come in and there are tools to be able to go to work and win with. The tools are there. The personnel is there. It's just a matter of orchestrating it so that it works seamlessly. So, compared to the last coach, Florida is actually in a better position, and that aids with some of his motto as far as Billy's motto in the sense of leaving it better than you found it. He did leave it better than he found it, just not on the offensive side of the football. But it has been left better. B, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's really well said. I think you really hit a lot of key points there in terms of kind of where we are. I'm going to focus on a couple of things that are similar and then talk about maybe a couple of things that vary just a hair in terms of where we're at in terms of that. So first and foremost, the talent piece. I want to make a point here. If you look just at the talent composite rankings of the entire team, we're very similar position for the last 4 or 5 years. There's really not a lot of change in that. Actually, you can go back further than that. It's pretty much the same. We kind of don't vary a whole lot there in the last decade, really. So you might be saying, wait, where's this talent improvement that you're talking about? And where it is in the starters and actually the backups. So if you look at what we refer to as the two deep, right, and you look at blue chip ratio. So when you look at the actual star talent rating, right, and the overall composite rating, it didn't have that much variance. But when you look at the blue chip ratio, so 4 or 5 star players, the blue chip ratio on this particular team is the best that it has been in a very, very, very long time, right? So the amount of 4 and 5 stars, mostly 4 stars, but still, that are on this team as starters or backups, right, that are going to see the field, right, on a regular basis is way, way higher on both sides of the ball than it has been in a long, long time at the University of Florida. And that's where that talent differential really lies, is in that blue chip ratio, right? Randy kind of mentions it every week when we do the recruiting update and where we're at and sitting with that. But when we look at who's actually on the roster and playing, right, that's important. It's not just who's there, but who's actually seeing the field. The talent differential that we have right now is really there. The other point that I really want to make here, and this is something that I brought up before, but it's been a while since we talked about it, is the culture piece from what we were dealing with before versus what we're dealing with now. Mullen left this team in shambles from a culture standpoint. It was a mess. Again, we've discussed this before at times, but when you go back and you take a look, there was an article written. It was a really good article, and I apologize, I can't cite it right now. It was years ago that I read it, so I don't have it handy. But there was an article that I read. It was a super in-depth article. It was like a 10-minute read. I mean, it was really well done, and I apologize for not being able to cite it here. That's shame on me for bringing it up without having that. However, it was a really in-depth piece, and it quoted direct players sources that were willing to talk, like on the record, about coaches that were there under Mullen's tenure as position coaches, about Mullen himself and kind of how he would handle certain situations. It was less scathing about Mullen, but more about what he would kind of allow under his leadership within the organization, and allow his coordinators to do, if you will. Because if you're the head coach, the behavior you allow is that's your responsibility, and what you're willing to tolerate. And some of the stuff that he was willing to tolerate and then he allowed, it's flat out unacceptable in my opinion, and really beyond that, quite frankly. The way this team was left from a culture standpoint, and again, we've alluded to this over time, what Billy inherited wasn't just a lack of talent in terms of the roster, but the culture nightmare that he came into was nothing short of an absolute train wreck. And so, again, we've talked about it a lot. It's part of the reason we have a culture segment in our regular pod, right? Is to talk about what he's been able to do to turn this, or what he was able to do to turn the culture around on this team, and he did it in spades. So again, we've always given him credit for that. We've heard a lot of things about players going other places and the culture being better. LSU, for example, Jack Pyburn, and some reports coming out today about that culture might lead you to know for a fact that that was a lie. Sorry, not sorry. No way was that about anything but money, period. That is not a better culture at LSU. It just is not. So, I'll say it again. What he was able to do to turn around the culture in the locker room, the culture with the coaches, the culture just of this football program as a whole, nothing short of very impressive. So where does that lead us? We have a lot of talent that's available on the field, at least currently. You have to keep it, or at least the bulk of it. You have a great culture in the locker room. So what does that look like for potential for the future? Well, I think one of the things that you're going to see us alluding to is throughout this pod, and we kind of mentioned it a little bit in the last one, is if you can get the right person in here moving forward with the right timing, which is going to be the problem, I think. But if you can do that, you have a chance to really make some sparks here, because all the pieces are really in place right now. You just had somebody who couldn't get out of their own way in terms of what was going on the field, and just couldn't manage to delegate that out and make some better decisions there. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, again, we'll talk about it, but I think it's a very interesting and potentially exciting future that is in front of us with a lot of the pieces that are in place. And I'm not just saying that. That's not just a hope bomb that I'm trying to drop there. There's real data to back that up when you look into the situation that's here. So anyway,
It is.
I
Hey, B, can I
and I
add
think
one
that
thing
is
to you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I was just going to say, I think it's a drastic difference from where we were the last time we lost a coach. That's the only other thing I was going to say in closing. What do you got?
Agreed. Thank you. No, I just wanted to throw in there. I remember the article. I went back in my database. I found it.
Oh, my
Okay. It
man.
was an
I
article.
love
It
you.
was an article written by Neil Schulman. Okay. In all kinds of weather, culture shock inside the Florida Gators implosion under Dan Mullen.
Well, kudos to
It
Neil. Kudos to Neil.
Yeah, long read, but one of the I'll read some quotes in there from you or from the article. This is Austin Barber. I don't care what people say, our team was just divided in 2021.
Yeah.
Derek Wingo, the team that just didn't play together, everyone was out for themselves,
Uh-huh.
even the coaches.
Yep.
Scooby Williams, I love Dan Mullen, I truly do. I'll always be grateful to him, but things are just more laid out now. They're better structured and organized. We know what the expectations are. I'll just stop there. So there you go.
Yep. And there you go. Um, Obviously still a guy who left for the portal, but we'll leave that one alone.
Yeah,
Um,
I know.
but hey, but no, point taken. There was also some stuff in that article about Grantham just ignoring players if they weren't on the practice field. I mean, Hevesy just saying things that the player wouldn't even repeat on the record. They were so heinous about stuff he would say to players at practice. I mean,
Oh yeah,
just
the I remember that piece of the article, the Todd Grantham effect, paragraph 6 and 7.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, rough stuff, rough stuff. So, I mean, really just pretty horrendous stuff that was going on. Obviously, you hear nothing about things like that now. So, really just a very different place. So,
Yes.
very different place than we were then. Very interesting potential for the future. Doesn't mean it's going to play out that way, right? There's again some things that have to come together the right way, and there unfortunately are now some things that I think are working against us for that. But we'll get to that later. So with that, let's get started and set some baselines here for where we are now, where and then set some parameters for obviously what we would like to see going forward, or just again a baseline to compare it to. So start with the offense. This is ugly. This is not pretty, everybody. You may want to cover your eyes or cover your ears.
Sorry, B, you got to do this one.
Yeah, I got to do this one. All right, so we set four baseline numbers that we want to compare to, and we'll talk about how we're going to compare them at the end. But we'll start off with total offense. So total offensive numbers, so total yards per game on offense. We are currently averaging 363, and when we pulled these numbers, and granted that was before this week, so these rankings are based on through week 7, not through week 8. So that's something to keep in mind because we didn't pull them before the bye week numbers were in. But so 363 yards per game, which ranks 91st nationally. And that's the best ranking you're going to hear in this bunch. All right,
Wow.
so that's where we are in total offense. Scoring offense, 22.4 points per game. Yikes. That was, again, through week 7, tied for 103rd nationally. Or I guess it was through week 8. Now we're through week 9, excuse me. But anyway, tied for 103rd nationally. Third down conversion percentage, 31.9. 125th nationally. There are 134 teams in Division 1 or
That's all.
FBS. So we are 9 from the bottom in third down
Oof.
conversion. Yikes. Miami game did not help us there with that 0 for 13. All right. Total turnovers, 12 turnovers offensively, tied for 113th nationally.
Yeesh.
There you go. Those are the four we're going to look at on both sides of the ball, and those are not pretty. Not pretty. All right, I'll turn it over to you. Give us the defensive rundown.
Yeah, and that's the unfortunate part. People are wondering why. Well, I think people know why, but in a more detailed look, this is really why we don't have Billy Napier as a coach because he fell on his
Exactly right.
sword and didn't get a play caller. And the offensive numbers over the past 4 years have continued to decline worse than the stock market. Okay,
Yeah,
anyways,
we
defensive
chronicled
numbers.
we actually chronicled that they've actually gotten worse rather than better,
Yes,
right, under him, despite the talent improving. So yeah, good point there.
unfortunately,
Good
yes,
call out.
yes.
Good call out.
So absolutely, B, absolutely. Good numbers. I mean, bad numbers, but they are what they are. So on the
That's right.
defensive side of football, a slightly different tune. Total
Mm-hmm.
defense, 337.6 yards per game allowed, which ranks number 42nd nationally. Very respectable.
Yes,
Remember our
indeed.
preseason pod? Remember what we talked about as far as offensive and defensive numbers? Where do we need to rank to be to be playing towards the end of the season? Well, here we
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Scoring defense, 20 points per game allowed, 33rd nationally. We will say that that 20 was adjusted. Ben and I adjusted it down to 19 because if you remember in the LSU game, there was a pick six. So that was not given up, points not given up by the defense. So there you go. But either way, 33rd nationally. Third down defense, 38.6%. Our highest rank, 69th nationally.
Yep.
Definitely
Could
some
be a little
work to
better
do
there.
there.
That's been a little disappointing on third down, honestly.
It has been. It has been. Again, this defense has done some great things this year. The bend don't break mentality, as you all know. The past game we had, oh, I don't know, we had about 4 or 5 freshmen on the field due to
Yeah.
injuries and depth concerns. So that definitely did not help in that game.
And I would argue that Caleb Banks playing about 20 snaps this entire season so far does not help that third down number at all.
No doubt. No doubt. When it comes to pressure, and I've made the comment before, where in the world is Tyreek Sapp? Well, he doesn't have his running partner with him. So based off of that,
Yeah.
he is not be able to be as effective. I still need him to wreak some havoc, but definitely not
Agreed.
able to be as effective, right? And then of course, total turnovers forced, 9 turnovers forced, tied for 55th in the nation. So there's the
Yep.
defensive side of the football. Still numbers to be improved, but however, a much different story when we talk
Yes.
about that famous phrase, playing complementary football.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I wonder how long we'll be making Napier quotes. It'd be interesting to see how long we
Too long.
keep wanting to do that.
Yeah.
I hope not too long for the record.
Fair.
I hope we can get some Lane quotes in here. Yes, that's a preview for what we want. But because man, they're a lot more fun than Billy's.
They
Okay,
are.
so as we talked about, what will we compare? So two comparisons we're going to make here. We will compare where we rank overall versus these numbers at the end of the season, right? Because we'll have the full season data, so we'll see how much the ranks improve, right? And the numbers themselves, right? How much they improve, hopefully, or don't, right? But we'll see what they look like versus these numbers for the full season numbers versus these at the end of the year, because we're just past the halfway mark, but
Yeah.
right. So we'll kind of see first half, second half, and then we'll look at just our actual performance. Randy has volunteered to check out just our last 5 weeks and compare them to the first seven for our own stats, right? So
Yes.
first seven, last five, right, under the interim leadership. What do those look like specifically for Florida? We'd love to be able to give you what do the last five look like versus the rest of college football, but unfortunately, there are no stat sites that work that way. Believe me, we
Right.
checked, but that's not a thing. So we can't isolate just the last 5 weeks, right? Unless we literally do everything manually. And yeah, we don't have that kind of time. Sorry, folks. We love you, but we we can only this isn't our full-time
Yes.
job, right? So there you go. So with that'll be how we compare this. So overall in the rankings for these numbers, and then just Florida to Florida, right, for the last five versus the first seven. So there you go. And we will revisit that in our end of the season pod at the end of the year, of course. So with that, let's turn it over and start talking about some of our offensive staff changes and opportunities that they present. I'll let you take it away. Get us started with Billy G.
Billy G is not my, no, just kidding. Wrong Billy G. Wrong Billy G. So new interim coach at the University of Florida. So Billy G in his press conference was famous for saying, "I've been here through 3 different decades, right?" So I just want to take you
Yeah,
all through
you
a
have.
little bit through what that looks like. So Gonzalez um, first matched up with Urban Meyer. You might have remember that name in Bowling Green.
I mean, maybe.
Maybe that's also where he met Dan Mullen and John Hevesy. I think you mentioned those names earlier.
I did. I
Um,
did.
Exactly. So they did that in Bowling Green, found some great success. They had a nice little core there, moved on to Utah in 2003. Meyer, Mullen, Hevesy, and Gonzalez. Sounds like a law firm. Anyways, we know the success he had there at Utah with Alex Smith doing what he did. The Utes had phenomenal season. And then, of course, moved on to Florida in 2005. 3 years as wide receivers coach. He was promoted to recruiting coordinator in 2008. So after
Interesting.
2008, what was that again, B?
I just said interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah, recording coordinator. So Billy G dabbled in that for a while, did very well. Believe it or not, moved on from Florida in 2010 to serve as LSU's passing game coordinator and wide receivers coach under the Mad Hatter himself, Les Miles.
Mm-hmm.
So did well there. And then 2012 became the co-offensive coordinator at Illinois, right? It's Illinois. It is what it is. But then he left Illinois when he saw it wasn't going so well and reunited with Mullen and Hevesy at Mississippi State, right? Promoted to offensive analyst and co-offensive coordinator prior to the 14th season. And outside of that, he spent time after his time there, returned to Florida with Mullen and Hevesy in 2018 to the role of co-offensive coordinator. Of course, we know when Mullen left, he left as well, and Gonzalez went south to Willie Taggart's staff, if you remember that name from Florida State, went down to FAU as wide receivers coach, and of course, returned to Florida before the beginning of the 2023 season when he received a call from Coach Napier. He said, I would love to return to Florida. So the guy's been around. He's been around some great minds. He's been around some great opportunities. He's been around the offensive side of the football. He's been involved in recruiting, in passing, in receiving. One would serve, especially with Les Miles, especially with Mullen, especially with Meyer, definitely an offensive minded coach. And clearly from his press conference, he alluded to that as such. So either way, Billy G, a lot of history with UF, a lot of history around in the SEC and other schools, poised to do some great things here in the interim for the last 5 games of the season.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I really like about this is a guy who's had a connection to Florida for a really long time. So
Yep.
it's interesting, you heard a lot of names floated about who was going to be the interim coach, and this was not one of them. And I actually love it. It's interesting because I did not hear this name floated at all, and I think Strickland did a heck of a job in promoting him because it actually makes a ton of sense. This is a guy who understands the Florida brand, not only now, but from the last time we were a national powerhouse, right? And what a great thought to put him in charge because he's the only guy on this staff that actually knows what that was like.
Bingo.
And that's honestly brilliant if I'm going to be real about it. That is the correct branding move, right? To put that person in charge of this operation for the rest of the year. So hats off to Strickland on that one. I think he absolutely got that call spot on. There were a lot of different names kind of floating around of who you might do this with, and I think he hit the nail on the head. And it's a person that I honestly didn't even think of. So, well done, Scott. Hats off on that one. I think you really nailed it. So, with that, let's move on to the next coaching change here, who, of course, was implemented by Billy G to become the new play caller, and that is one Mr. Ryan O'Hara. Former quarterbacks coach. I guess technically he is still the quarterback coach, so I shouldn't say former. He is
Right.
still the quarterback coach, but he is now the new play caller. So he will be calling the plays. Does previously have play calling experience. The last time he did it was with Alabama A&M. And was not crazy successful in doing that. If you go back and look at the numbers, it wasn't horrific or anything, but it was very mid. If we're going to be real and look at the numbers on that, I'm not going to go through all the stats. But the interesting thing is he did call plays this spring in the Orange game. He was actually the play caller for for the Orange team in the spring game. Um, that went pretty well. Set
Oh, yeah.
records for both the quarterback and wide receiver in one Dallas Wilson and Harrison Bailey being the quarterback for both passing yards and receiving yards and receptions, I believe, in that game. So Dallas in particular had 10 receptions for 195 yards and 2 touchdowns. Harrison had 373 yards. That one I'm going off memory, so apologies if it's a little off, but it's close. That's close to the correct number. I know Dallas's stat line is correct there. And all three of those being the passing yards, the receptions, and the receiving yards were all spring game records for Florida. And Ryan O'Hara was calling those plays. Now, granted, was against the second team defense. worth noting, right? Was not against the first team. However, definitely saw some effective play calling being put on display there. So very interested to see how that looks as he now kind of holds the reins and of course has a very good relationship with one DJ Lagway. Thus the reason that Billy G actually, I think, did this more than anything was the fact that he would be the person in his ear during the game, somebody that he is very comfortable talking to, obviously his main quarterback coach, other than, of course, Billy, because Billy was also uh, effectively a quarterback coach, right? That was part of his role. So, very interesting to see what that looks like. I think, as far as opportunities go, right? Kind of what we're talking about here, that and one other that we'll get to in a minute is probably at the top of my list to kind of see how that opportunity wise works out. So next on the list is well, I will get any thoughts you have on O'Hara first before we get to the next.
Yeah, no, I think the interesting thing about Ryan O'Hara is the fact that during every time out, every time Lagway comes to the sideline, Lagway and Mertz for the record last year especially, or two
Yep.
years ago, O'Hara's there, right? He's the guy in the ball cap, the black frame glasses, salt and pepper hair, probably more salt than pepper now, but either way, he's always there next to him. He's always there in the air, right? And the thing that I think is interesting about him is the fact that he took a nobody, which again, Levi Lewis was who he was, but Levi Lewis at Louisiana, right, was named the 2021 Sun Belt Conference Championship Game MVP. Levi Lewis became the first 3,000-yard passer in program history and setting a single season record for touchdowns, right? And so when I look at that and what he did relative to coming into Louisiana, yes, the Raging Cajuns, O'Hara might have that ability to be a whisperer, right? The quarterback whisperer. And I think with all that time that they had in film to study, all that time when DJ was down, who was there in his ear? Yeah, Billy,
Mm-hmm.
sure, but it was Ryan O'Hara. So is he the whisperer for DJ? Can he calm him? Can he does Ryan O'Hara know exactly what his strengths are? Absolutely. Can he put him in a position to succeed? In O'Hara, we hope, right? We hope he can do that. And so if
Nice.
those things all match up as well as I think they can, and DJ gets settled and he feels comfortable, what is possible there? That's what I'm
Yeah,
looking forward to.
that's right. That's definitely the interesting question right now, for sure. For sure. All right, on to Mr. Callaway.
Well, as the article would cite, what does Russ Callaway do? Uh,
Yes,
and
indeed.
and and, and I feel so bad about that. It's really tough, right? So for those of you who know or don't know, but Callaway got his first career job right when he was an analyst for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Again, Nick Saban, the Dark Sith Lord strikes again. He was part of the coaching staff when they won a national championship in 2011 and 2012. Um, then he was hired away by Murray State. In 13, he served as a wide receivers coach, recruiting coordinator. Again, here's another guy involved on the offensive side of the football, analyst, coach, recruiting, analyst, coach, recruiting. Interesting theme. Um, After that, he decided to take a job with the Samford Bulldogs. Yes, Samford. Yes, that was the team that we played last year and beat convincingly in DJ's first big start. But more so, that was the Samford Bulldogs that years ago gave FSU a run for its money because Callaway does adopt a very much an air raid style type of offense. So after Samford, hired by LSU, another analyst position, then co-offensive coordinator. Then he joined the New York Giants as an offensive assistant. Then, of course, coming back to the Gators on the defensive side of the football this time as a defensive intern.
Which
Then in
made no
20,
sense for the record. No
no,
sense.
it's like where did that come from? Offense recruiting analyst, offense recruiting analyst, defensive intern. What?
Yeah.
Anyways, that is what it is. But again, in 2023, we knew he was promoted to tight ends coach, from tight ends coach, co-offensive coordinator, from co-offensive coordinator and tight ends coach to offensive coordinator, but a
But
position
not
again that
really.
we believe in name only, right?
Yep.
So the main thing about Russ is yes, O'Hara's calling the plays, but Russ is going to be involved more play design. So based off of that, do we see more air raid? Do we see more vertical passing? Do we see different concepts? Do we, instead of four hitches, do we see a hitch, a post, a cross, a slant? Do we see some variation of that? Do we see some end arounds, whatever the case might be? Do we see different play designs? Hopefully, Callaway can insert some of those influences in this offense and, like we've mentioned before, use some of that talent that we have.
So, two things that I have learned. Well, one thing I learned, one thing I heard that I believe to be
Okay.
true, but I can't substantiate it. One thing I know for sure, one thing I can't substantiate, but I'll share. So, the thing I've learned that I did not know is that when Russ was the OC at Samford, and perhaps I should have known this, but we talked about this previously when we made a case for him to be the OC
Yeah.
over a year ago. Um, he didn't call plays. I didn't know that. So shame on me for not have found that out, finding that out, and having researched that better. But or
Ah,
I don't know if it was available or whatever, but I didn't know that. The head coach called plays, ironically. So very much a similar situation to where he is now. His title was offensive coordinator, but he was not the play caller. So very much like this season at Florida. So Russ Callaway has never called plays. So it is actually very appropriate that Ryan O'Hara is calling plays because he has called plays and Russ Callaway has not. So kudos to Billy G for not assigning play calling to a guy who has never done that professionally and giving him a shot out of nowhere at the SEC level, especially in the first game against probably one of the best defensive coordinators in all of college football, Glenn Schumann. So I'm glad that's not happening for the record. So that is something I know. Something I did not know that is rather interesting. And again, I can't fully substantiate it, but the rumor is, and it's not a rumor. It's more than a rumor. It's been talked about from what I would call to be trusted sources.
sure.
But I can't tell you that I know it for a fact, is that there is a lot more in the quote Napier playbook that we either never saw or almost never saw. A lot more, which is mind-numbingly frustrating for the record.
Yes.
However, what it tells you is that there are a lot more options that could have been used that weren't used. And it makes me think even more so that they're not saying we have to obviously use that same playbook, but the point being is that you're not going to go in and just completely reinvent an offense in the middle of the season. That's
Correct.
highly unlikely. But you could obviously keep similar concepts and ideas and simply restructure some play design and some themes and some things that you were doing. Obviously, we've talked about that before. And I think that not only is that possible, but it's extremely possible if you're telling me that we had a playbook that could already do that. We just weren't doing it, which makes me want to break lots of things that are all around me currently in the room. But we'll leave that alone for now. So just add it to the list of visor throws, right? But anyway, again, I can't substantiate that 100%, but I have reason to believe it's true. So very interested to see how Russ has influenced, to your point, right, with his background, because it is an air raid background. You're not wrong
Yes.
there. And interested to see how that influence does come into potential foreplay design, what things from perhaps the already existing playbook are actually used and could be, capitalized on as we move forward here. So I'll leave it at that. Next on the list, and the other guy that I think could potentially have a lot of upside in his new role is one Steve Spurrier Jr. So there's been a lot made about the change in role for Steve from being just an off-field analyst to now being on the sidelines more in the O'Hara role, right, that you kind of alluded to, right, talking to DJ when he comes off the field, reviewing film, um, and kind of going over the plays with him and talking to him about this, essentially functioning as the quarterback coach on the field during games, right? That'll kind of be his role now. I don't know that there's a ton of significance to this. It might be somewhat significant. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from Spurrier here in terms of whether or not he can be impactful in this role. I'm sure he can, but ultimately, how much is really gleaned from that 5 minutes on the sideline after a drive, right, and going over and looking at the iPad. Maybe something, maybe certain plays. Sure, I can certainly see there being some upside, right? That's why they do it, is to say, hey, you missed this, or watch out for this next time, or there can certainly be some things that are gleaned there, right, from the quarterback, especially if the coach on the sideline is pointing out certain things that he sees as being key, and that DJ can respond to. I'm not saying it's a nothing burger, but is
Sure.
it, world altering that he is now the one on the sidelines doing that versus Ryan? No, I don't think so. I don't think this is going to be, some drastic change that's going to make us 100 times better because it's Steve Spurrier Jr. sitting over there versus Ryan O'Hara. So,
Yeah.
to me, this is fine. I don't think it's a bad change. I think it's a good replacement, right, to bring him in since O'Hara is going to be up in the booth now. I think, again, solid call by Billy G here, but nothing that I see as being monumental. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, nothing really monumental. I mean, when I look at his career overall, it's a journeyman's career,
Mm-hmm.
right? Nothing super established. Not to take anything away from him, right?
No.
Served as a grad assistant for his dad, all right, at Florida. Then he marched his way over to Oklahoma, right? When Bob Stoops left Florida, he went to Oklahoma. Guess what? Spurrier Jr. went over there, right? Wide receivers coach. Then when his dad went to the NFL, he went to the NFL with the Washington Redskins. Then he left there. When he came back to the college ranks, it was Arizona under Mike Stoops, the other Stoops. He only hasn't coached under Mark Stoops, oddly enough, right? His dad comes back to college football, goes to South Carolina. He goes there to South Carolina, passing coordinator, recruiting coordinator, co-offensive coordinator, receivers coach. Great, no problem. After that, he goes back to Oklahoma under Bob Stoops. Okay, offensive specialist, director of high school recruiting. Great, no problem. Has a short stint in Western Kentucky, didn't do what it was supposed to do. This is what I think is the most interesting part of his tenure. Goes to Washington State in 2018, wide receivers coach and passing game coordinator under the legendary, rest his soul, Mike Leach.
Mike Leach. Yep.
So,
Yep. Yep.
yeah, he went to Mississippi State after that, then Tulsa, and of course Florida since. But that influence there, that time with Mike
More.
Leach, did he glean anything from that?
Yeah. More air raid too. Right.
Right?
Interesting. Yep.
Right. So could we see some of that? But to your point, B, the fact that the playbook, was it like Coach Klein's playbook in in Waterboy? Like,
I don't know.
okay, yeah, sticking to the first 3, 4 pages here when you got like 20. But either way, very
You know,
frustrating. Do we see some of the rest of that opened up?
and it's funny we draw all these Coach Klein, parallels, right, from our
Yeah.
point, and of course he came from Louisiana. I mean, it's too good
You
sometimes.
can't
It
make it
just
up.
writes itself
Yeah.
sometimes. It really does.
Yeah.
All right. So last question here on the staffing. We mentioned the opportunities and we've alluded to some of them. What's the ceiling and what's the floor of this reworked offensive staff? What is your take on that? Just real quick, high level. What do you see as the ceiling and what do you see as the floor for this?
The ceiling is the fact that the offense just looks different. Okay. The offense looks capable. It looks competent. It looks in rhythm. There's flow to it. There's motion to it. And again, the ability to compete. If we're really going to play complementary football, the offense needs to move, whether it be a, 12 play, 75-yard drive that takes off 8 minutes, or it's a 4 play, 66-yard drive that takes off 2.5 minutes. Regardless, the offense needs to look competent in flow, in rhythm, and motion. So if the offense can do that, that would be great. As far as a floor goes, gosh, I don't even want to think about a floor. I mean, because look at the ranks that you just spun out, earlier. Regarding those ranks there, gosh, I don't know how much more, you go backwards other than, 91st, 103rd, 125th, and 113th nationally. As long as this offense can look somewhat capable, I just expect them to be able to move the ball, have a breath of fresh air, and see some variety and breathe and things that they could not do before. And hopefully, with that, I'm not saying we win out the rest of our games, but it's at least
but
challenging.
but we went out the rest of our games, so you kind of really paused there.
But no, 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 no. But I mean, it's competitive. It's exciting. We're averaging more than 11.2 a game. Like, you know what I mean? It's just There's a lot more
20,
to be had there.
22.4, where you cut it in half. We're not that bad. It's 22.4. It's not 11.2. You gave us
Oh,
a
sorry, I was
little
on
too little
that
credit.
3 game stretch. Yeah, 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 yeah.
All right. So I like your floor analysis. I agree. The floor is where we are now. You can't get any worse than where we are now. This is the floor. We're at the floor. So I agree with you on the floor, but you sold the ceiling short, man. I got to argue with you on the ceiling. The ceiling is this thing looks like what the talent is capable of making it look like in the
Okay.
hands of a competent or maybe more than competent play caller, which is this thing starts humming. This thing starts cooking, right? We got a lot of talent out there. You start putting out plays that make sense, and you start throwing the defense off balance with the run game that we can complement it with. And what this offensive line is capable of in run blocking, which we have seen probably more so than we've seen in pass blocking. But from run blocking, it's started to show what it can do, especially last game, right? Well, just in terms of production, but I would say
Production, right?
overall, we've really seen more in terms of what they can do run blocking wise. You start throwing that in with a competent and really more than competent, how about creative passing game? That's your ceiling. And when that starts happening, or if that starts happening, this offense starts to cook. That's your ceiling. And that's what's exciting here is that could actually happen. I'm not saying it will. I'm saying it could, right? We're talking ceiling here. And if that starts happening and you start seeing 40 points a game, and yes, I'm being realistic, that is possible. We have the talent to do that on this team without question. And you've just removed our biggest handicap by far in one defunct play calling Billy Napier, right? Now all of a sudden you take the training wheels off and you let us go. Maybe this offense can go cook. Again, don't know that they can, but I think what you mentioned with just being competent is probably more like the median to me. The ceiling is watch out. That's the
Mm,
ceiling because that's what the talent ceiling would allow for on this team. And to me, the ceiling is what does your talent tell you you're capable of doing? And on this offense, that would be a lot,
wow.
right? That would be a lot. So
Bold,
that's the way I'm choosing to evaluate it. So
bold
I think
strategy,
I think
Ben.
you were conservative there. So and you know what? I don't blame you because there's a lot of trauma.
Trauma? Are you kidding me? I've been wrong about everything from the preseason pod. So all I'm going to say to that is bold strategy, Ben. Let's see if it pays
Oh,
off for him.
I'm not. Just because I said it's the ceiling doesn't mean I'm calling for it to happen. Now let's pump the brakes there. We'll get to picks later, and I think you'll see I'm not
Okay.
getting that bold.
Okay.
All right, but all right. With that, let's move it along. Let's get into new coaching discussion. As we mentioned, we're only talking about one here, and it's not because we think it's the only option or we think we're hosed without it or anything like that. But we're just going to talk about the most prominent name around Gainesville and God knows Randy's probably hearing it every day. And that is, of course, one Mr. Lane Monty Kiffin. Uh, Lane Train is in full effect in Gainesville. Unfortunately, with this weekend's results, it didn't make things any easier, and we'll get there in a minute. But by all measurable results currently, this is the number one candidate that we can evaluate by both our targeting, the potential to come here, right? Every metric is pointing to this is the number one prospect candidate, most desired, right? Everything else. So we're going to talk some pros and cons here. I'll get us started on the pros side. Offensive minded, obviously, more than offensive minded. The guy's borderline savant in that regard. He's taking a backup FCS transfer quarterback and turned him into a possible Heisman hopeful. I mean, get the heck out of town, man. It's ridiculous. And don't get me wrong, the kid's talented, but put him in another offense, and I don't think he's producing like he's producing an Ole Miss offense. And that's what you want out of an offensive-minded coach is the ability to make your players look spectacular when they might be good, but they're probably not as good as you're making them look, right? My classic example is Matt Castle on the Patriots years ago, right?
Ooh.
Everybody wanted him when Brady went down because he looked incredible, and he goes to a different team and you're like, wow, this guy's hot garbage, right? So that's the premier example that I always point to for that is when your team and your coach make you look a lot better than you actually are, right? And I'm
Right.
not saying that about Chambly. This is not a knock on him. He might be better than I think he is. I can't tell right now because the system that he's in is that good, and that's credit to Lane.
Oh
So,
yeah.
um, other pros, he obviously has ties to Florida, right? Not only the state, but the university itself, right? And clearly he has a great eye for talent. Now, it's very difficult for Ole Miss to recruit at a very high level. They do not carry the prestige that some other schools do. So all this talk about it being a better job or as good a job as UF, I'm sorry, I don't want to hear it. You cannot recruit on the same level. It's not just about UF, right? Can you recruit on the same level as LSU? Can you
Yep.
recruit on the same level as Georgia, Alabama, USC? I mean, I'll go on and on and on. Ohio State, like granted, we can't recruit on the same level as some of those schools, but Oregon. I mean, I can go for days. Notre Dame, Penn State. No, you can't recruit on the same level as any of those schools. So what are we talking about? Tennessee, none of them. None of them can you recruit on the same level at consistently year in and year out. So you don't have the same pedigree as a university, period. You just don't. Heck, you can't recruit at the same level as Auburn. I rest my case.
Oh,
Just good night. It's silly. It's absolutely silly that we're even having the conversation about that being an equal job to the University of Florida. It's stupid, and anybody who's doing it is straight trolling. So I'll move on. It's not personal. It's just a fact, right? That's just what the data supports. So I say that Lane has a great eye for talent because one, Chambly's great example, right? That's number one. But number two, look at all he's done with the portal, right? Because he can't land the same recruiting classes because of the university that he's currently at, which does limit him, which is motivation for him potentially to look elsewhere. Just saying, if he wants to succeed consistently at the highest level, he is trying to do it currently at a place that is going to be consistently more challenging for him year in and year out. Not saying it could never happen. Obviously, he's making a run this year, but doing it year in and year out, difficult to do at where he is. So ultimately, you can see his eye for talent, though, through the portal. Look at the guys that he has brought in there over the years. Great question for you. Quinshon Judkins. Where was he before he was at Ohio State winning a national title? Right?
a JUCO.
Yep. And where was he before that? Ole Miss. And where
Mm-hmm.
is he now tearing up the NFL in the last couple of games? I rest my case. Pretty good eye for talent there. That's just one of many examples that I could point to from Lane. Jackson Dart, it's not a bad one, right? I'm not personally a fan, but ultimately he's doing pretty well with the Giants. Where do you play quarterback, right? So there are multiple examples that you could point to. Um, Trey Harris is actually another one. I'll quit, but there's multiple different players that have played under Lane, especially offensively, obviously. But he has done a very good job of attracting portal talent and just talent in general, and figuring out who those guys are. And he has an excellent eye for it. He just can't always land who he needs to where he currently is. Moving him to Florida would give him a much better opportunity to do so. So those are my pros. What do you got?
I got you. Can I give you another tie to Florida?
Mm-hmm.
Are you aware that his wife slash ex-wife slash estranged wife,
Yes,
Layla, is a UF alum?
I am actually.
And do you know who she is the daughter of?
I think I do, but I can't remember right now.
Gators legend quarterback John Reeves, who led the
Yes,
Gators in the
yes,
69 season to a 9-1-1 record, their best record to date. Well, leading up to the 69 season, of course. So very interesting. Um, the plot thickens there. The plot
indeed,
very well
indeed.
thickens. Um, timing issues. So B, great pros. Let's get into some cons. Timing issues. Potentially, if Ole Miss makes the CFP, what does that mean? The Lane train will not make it into the station in time, potentially. Because here's the deal, we're playing football into December and January, and you look at what happens with the winter portal. Well, what do we do now? Because there's going to be an issue with portal timing, as well as, not to mention that when you look at other teams who have not made the CFP, they're already planning for 2026. So there's a
And
huge
there's
thing to
the
watch for.
and there's National Signing Day, which is on December 3rd this year, early
In
National Signing Day.
addition to NSD in the first 3 days of December. So that got moved up to the third
Yeah,
exactly.
it's
So
ridiculously early.
there's another timing issue because let's face it, when you look at Ole Miss's schedule, their last 5 games is extremely favorable when you look at the
Yeah.
win percentage. Even
Last four,
again,
I think, because they have a bye
four,
coming up.
sorry,
So I think it's the last
four,
four. Yeah.
correct,
Yeah.
exactly. Now, the next con about the lane train here, I feel like we should have a train horn playing every time we say that. But either way, winning against ranked opponents. Okay, I got a few numbers for you, B. So Lane Kiffin's record against ranked opponents is a little bit suspect, right? So since he's been at Ole Miss, his record is 11-24 against the AP Top 25.
Now, does that
Now,
include the win this weekend?
that record is improving. Yes. So
Yep.
with that, the 3 wins in his last 4 games against AP top 10 teams. So that's been key. And obviously, we know what happened with Georgia a couple of weeks ago. So overall at Ole Miss, the main thing is 11-24. It's a tough number against top 10, 5-6. Right. But again, he's trending up because he's won 3 of the
Yep.
last 4. He's got some very interesting stats when you look at the offensive side of the football. Ole Miss is ranked in the top 8, 7 when you look at offensive productivity, point scores, yards, rushing, passing. So very interesting there. Um, but outside of that, it's very interesting to see the fact that he just hasn't been able to get over the hump with certain challenges, certain games, certain teams. We'll see what happens this fall slash going into winter, how far he can go.
And what else is
And
interesting too is that despite you're talking about top 10 teams and everything else, when you look at most of the teams that
yeah,
are currently ranked in the top 10 talent composite wise, I'd have to go through and look, but other than Indiana, of course, which is 72nd in the talent composite, which is
right.
ridiculous. But other than them, I believe all of those teams that are in the top 10, don't quote me on it, I have to fact check it, but the vast majority of them, at least, I can confidently say, are inside the top 15 in the current this year's talent composite. Old Miss
It,
is 21.
so it's funny. I was trying to find that number because I wanted to bring that up, and everything I saw was 18 and under. And Ole Miss I saw was either 21 or 22 in some rankings. So
Yep.
I think that's accurate, B. I think
Yeah.
that's accurate.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, good call out there. And the last con that I have is maturity. So the reason why I say it like that is because we know that there were some comments made in his departure from Tennessee regarding a certain wide receiver going to South Carolina.
Yep.
Going to Tennessee or South Carolina. We know he didn't handle certain things properly there from a PR standpoint. We know comments that were made against Urban Meyer in Florida and their recruiting practices.
Yep.
We know some comments that were made while he was at USC during that very pivotal time under Pete Carroll and then getting the USC job. So you've got some issues there. And then at Alabama, obviously Saban gave him a great opportunity. Saban saw a lot of talent in him, a lot of just potential. And he did some great things while the OC at Alabama, right? Move them from more of a more mundane, slower type of offense. But even he left Alabama, checked out of Alabama a little bit sooner than he probably should have, especially under the Dark Sith Lord. So, from a maturity standpoint, yes, he's older, he's got 2 kids, yada, yada, yada. But again, will some of those mistakes of the past haunt him? From the Twitter perspective, from the social perspective, uh, he loves to troll. I get it. That's just the day and age that we are. Maybe if Spurrier, the old ball coach, had
Oh
to,
God. Can you
Twitter back
imagine
in the day,
Spurrier with a Twitter account? Oh my
maybe
Lanta.
I don't know. Maybe right.
Buddy,
I don't know what that
that would
would
have been
look
some
like
fun. That would have been some
exactly. But
fun.
it's very interesting to see some of the parallels with regards to the sound offs, with regards to some of the comments made, the trolling, the visor. Of course, the visor is probably the most recognizable thing with
Yep.
that link there. That links Lane and the head ball coach, but that is what it is. But has Lane grown up? I'm sure there are parts of him that has, but overall, would that still be a good fit here in Gaines, Vegas, especially when looking at the fan base, the media, and that's the other thing too. I don't think people realize the exposure from a media standpoint, and and how crushing it can be.
Yeah, for sure. So my thoughts just real quickly on the con side of things,
Of course,
again, you mentioned the record. I do think there's some concerns there, but to your point, it's been improving, right? And again, he's done that with a somewhat less talented team, not drastically less, but a somewhat less talented team. Billy can't win the games with a more talented team, right? So what does that say? Obviously, that he wasn't the right fit, right? Which is why we are where we are. But
yep,
I think for anybody that has the maturity concerns, this is what I would say. When you look at Lane's history, and I'm not like a defender here because I did not like Kiffin for a long time. I'll put my hand up and raise it right now. Um, and my problem was this, is that you kind of called it out in a way. Well, you did call it out, but just not in the manner that I'm going to frame it here. When you look back at some of the stuff that happened, he used to be very accusatory in a lot of the
right.
stuff that he would say. He would basically go on the record and make statements and accusations. And now he makes jokes. They might be pointed jokes, right? They might be targeted jokes, but they're jokes. And that's the difference. He's
Spot the ball.
learned, he's learned exactly. Yeah. Oh, damn
My
it.
goodness.
Damn it. Uh, those have been killer, man.
Right?
But that's exactly it, man. And you know what? And all I can do is laugh because he's got you. But it's not like it's like, oh man, you're a jerk, but it's funny. And that's how Spurrier was. Like, you're a jerk, but it's funny. And maybe other teams hated him, but like, I don't hate Lane for saying that because all I can do is go, yeah, he got us on that one. You know what I mean? Like, that's it, because like where I am and when I look at it, I'm like, yeah, that fair enough. Like,
Right.
he's got a right to have a little fun with that. And that's what it is. It's having a little fun with it. It's not accusing somebody of a recruiting violation with or without proof. And maybe he had the proof. I don't know. But at the end of the day, like that's not how you play that, right? If you want to go do that, you go do it where you through the proper channel that you do it, and you make your joke about it wherever you want to, right? And I think that's what he's learned, or at least that's the appearance that he's given that he's learned that, and I think he has, for the record, and that's why I'm okay now with this. I'm not anti Lane anymore, which I
Okay.
certainly was at one point in time. Absolutely. And I think a lot of people feel that way. I was actually talking to somebody yesterday about this, and they're very much like, no, 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 he's a jerk and all this stuff. And I was like, hey, 5, 6, 7 years ago, yeah, I'm right there with you. But I think there's been a change here. I don't see the same attitude and behavior that I saw 5, 6, 7 years ago. I think there's been a difference. I think he's learned. I think he got humbled by a lot of stuff that happened. I think he took a look in the mirror and figured out, hey, this is not probably how I need to be acting. I need to, you know, really reflect a little here and I can have some fun and make some comments and make some maybe pointed jokes, but I need to remember that in the public forum, I need to pay attention to kind of what I'm saying and remember to have some perspective on that. And that's certainly, by all appearances anyway, what I have seen in recent years. And so for that reason, that's where I'm at. Is it still potentially an issue? Yeah, possibly, but I certainly don't see the evidence of that for frankly quite some time that I used to. So that's where I'm at. I'd love to see it happen, but
Fair.
again, going back to your first point, the timing now concerns me because it is very unlikely they don't make the playoff, and I think that poses a problem for what we talked about at the beginning of this thing, which is,
Yes.
of course, if we don't get the timing right on this, it potentially causes some problems. So That's where my concern lies now. Does that mean I don't think we should still hire Lane if we can? No, I think we still should. If we can get him, I think that's the right hire, almost regardless of timing. But I think you have to deal with the fact that it might set us back for next season. Um, because there is the potential for even the winter portal window to be affected by that. So
Right.
I think, you've got to let that factor in and have some patience for that for at least a year if that is what the timing ends up being. So ultimately, we'll see what happens. But for now, that is still the lead candidate on the board. And interestingly enough, even with LSU's jobs coming available, Vegas's odds are still better for him to come here than they are for him to go there. So just a little
Well,
fun one
and you
for you on
you
that.
know why that is, right?
Probably because of all of his ties to Gainesville, I would assume. But if you have
Well,
another reason, hit me.
well, haven't you heard as of like 4:30 this afternoon, Saban's coming out of retirement. He's going to go to LSU.
75 to 1 for Saban to go there. Just so you know.
Right,
75 to
right.
1. Not good odds. Not good odds. All right. Moving along. 25 to 1 for Meyer to go to LSU, by the way, though.
Oh,
25 to 1.
shocking.
Just throwing it out there. All right. Moving on. Midseason superlatives. Let's get to this. All right. Um, I will get us started. Yes, sure. That
Yeah.
sounds good. Offense. All right. I'm going to surprise you here. I don't think this is going to be who you thought I would pick, or at least I think
Okay.
I'm going to surprise you, because I think the obvious pick here is one Jaden Baugh, and that is not who I picked.
Fair.
I'm giving it to VB3. He's going to earn this
Nice.
one for me. Despite a great performance from Baugh, and he very well may earn my full season one. If he hits 1,000 yards, he will. I'll tell you that right now, which he very well could do. But I got to call out VB3 for the midseason here. Freshman's got to get the honors. 32 catches, 451 yards, averaging over 14 yards per catch. Does not have a touchdown reception. Can we fix that, please? Ryan
Exactly.
O'Hara,
Should have
can
had
can
two.
we get VB3 in the end zone? I mean, come on. I couldn't believe that when I saw that. I was shocked. How does VB3 not have a touchdown? That blew my mind. But anyway, started his career as a Gator with one of the greatest catches I think I've ever seen in the swamp. Ricky Pearsall still might take it because that was ridiculous. But
Yeah.
but this is up there with that one-handed grab falling on his back. Absolutely incredible. He runs excellent routes. He makes defenders miss left and right. And he continues to impress me in the punt return game, right? Get me on special teams too. Kid is an all-around great player. Absolutely love him. Legacy, obviously, just love everything about what I'm seeing from him. And of course, only a true freshman has started every game so far this year. Hope he can start this next one. I know he got banged up in the last one. Hopefully, he's able to come back. So for me, so far, he has earned this. And that is my offensive midseason superlative. What do you got?
I love it. You have our leading wide receiver with 451 yards. That's awesome. That is awesome. I will take our leading rusher,
Yep.
117 carries, 611 yards,
Yes, indeed.
5.2 yards a carry, with his
Awesome.
long this season being 26 yards,
Which should have
four
been much longer
touchdowns.
twice, but yeah, go ahead.
Oh, he should have had a 54 and a 60.
Yep.
Unbelievable, both called back, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep.
Um, 87.29 rushing yards per game is the average. Why is that
Awesome.
important? Well, Jaden can become the first 1,000-yard rusher since Kelvin Taylor in 2015, where he surpassed 1,000 yards to get 1,035 with 13 tutties. There's been 10 total running backs to achieve the 1,000-yard feat at the University of Florida. Jimmy DuBose did it back in the days. Emmett Smith did it twice. Eric Rett did it twice. Fred Taylor, Ernest Graham, Ciatric Faison, Mark Gillisley, and Kelvin Taylor. And here's the catch. The reason why 6'11 is so important. He needs 389 yards to hit the feet. You divide 389 by 5 more games, needs to average 77.8 yards per game, and he's averaging 87.29.
Yep.
So you're saying there's a
Great.
chance. There's
Yep.
more than a chance. Jaden Baugh is as much as I can say an anchor in the running back position as I can ever say. Great kid, great attitude, can run. He's shifty, he's smart, great vision, sees gaps, even at the size 6'6.5", 6'1", 230, 235, whatever he is, can just move like a joystick in a dream.
Ooh,
Has some,
like
you
it.
know, just has some amazing abilities, the jump cuts, the angles that he takes, and again, some great blocking. But at the end of the day, his vision really seals the deal when it comes to a lot of the great runs that he has had. So can't say enough about Jaden. He gets my midseason superlative. Although VB3, good choice there, B.
Yeah, for sure. And I just, like I said, I very easily could have picked Baugh as well, but just had to mix it up there. So I'll let you go first on defense. Who you got?
Absolutely. So here's a kid, a Gainesville native. He knows the deal. He knows what it's like to wear orange and blue. Legacy player.
Oh,
His
we're gonna
dad,
share this one.
yep, his dad coaches, 25 minutes up the road in Santa Fe High School. They're turning around that program. But Miles Graham, 22 solo tackles, 18 assisted tackles, 40 total tackles. That leads your team. Three pass deflections. Here's a true sophomore doing the deal. Okay, when we thought Castells was going to be the likely quarterback for the defense after Shamar James was that quarterback for the defense in years past and moved on. No, the quarterback for the defense is Miles Graham. He's got the headset, he's got the earpiece, he's hearing the calls being radioed in from Ron Roberts. This kid's got a knack. And I tell you what, this could have gone so differently. He enrolled early at Florida, had a minor back procedure done from a lingering injury from high school. And of course, we know when it comes to the back, could be iffy. But they did a great job with his rehab, and not to mention get him back on track. And he has been absolute gold to anchor this defense from the linebacker position. And I see why you raved about the linebacking position, B, especially at the beginning of the season, but he
Yep.
has proven to be worth more his weight than gold to be that glue for that core, that defense. Can't say enough about Miles Graham. Phenomenal season thus far.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have the same, which should be zero shock to anybody that's listened to a single pod this year and hear me talking about him pretty much every week. So yeah, has to be Miles for me here. You mentioned it, the 40 tackles, 22 solo, three passes defended as well. But to me, it goes way beyond the stat sheet for him, right? Not that those stats aren't solid, of course, but he's seemingly never out of position. He's always filling the right gap. He's always making the right play or the right tackle at the right time when we need him to, right? Multiple times has he stopped a play that could have gone for a lot more, and he's been the one guy that could stop it and did, right? Go back to last year. It's not about this, but he's the guy against Ole Miss who stops Pegues twice, right? I mean, just
Oh, yeah.
unbelievable play as a true freshman, right? So solid in coverage for a linebacker consistently, and just continues to demonstrate why he's such a talent. You mentioned it, true sophomore, and he is absolutely living up not only to being a legacy, but just playing as a Gator, right? You talked about it, knows what it means to represent orange and blue because of
Yes.
his father, but also just seems to really play for Gator pride as well. I mean, it just I can't say enough about the kid. I absolutely love him. Really, really hope that that's one of the pieces that we're able to keep intact here moving forward. For the record, I think it will be. I think guys like him, like VB3, like a lot of the legacies we have here, are going to want to stay. I think we'd kind of have to give them a reason not to, which is great, right? That's one of the great things about, recruiting some of these legacy kids. And I think that will help us in keeping some of these core pieces together. And they've also stated that they've made it kind of their mission to keep a lot of the core of this team together moving forward. And I sure hope they're able to do it. So that's another thing, right? They've been recruiters for us. They've been, in the corner of keeping this group together and all the talent that's here. I mean, I just the list goes on and on, man. But
It
Miles,
does.
hats off to you. I can't say enough good things. The preseason hype, if you will, was there, and I kind of already
Yeah,
had reason to believe from film last year, and man, it's only lived up to it and more. Just been absolutely awesome. So,
it
all
has.
right,
Hey,
with
B, I'm gonna throw
that,
in one more thing for you.
yeah, fire away.
I just thought about this. I probably should have brought it up earlier, but it just got triggered to me when you were mentioning that about Miles and the legacy and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
Billy G said something very interesting during his press conference. He said, "Play for the patch, and you represent your name on your jersey."
yeah,
And Miles Graham is a spitting image of that quote, lived
yeah,
out week in, week out, no doubt.
for multiple reasons, right? But yeah, you're right. You're
Yeah.
right. All right, let's get into the picks for the rest of the season here and get towards wrapping this. What do you got? How we feeling about the rest of the year? What do we think we go for the final 5 games? Give me just high level. We're not going to break it down, but give me what do you think the record is for the final 5, and who do we win to get to that record, or what are the wins that you've got us going?
Yeah, yeah. So vacillated back and forth, not knowing what to expect from the offense.
Yep.
My hope is that the defense will be there or be at least a little bit better because we had 2 weeks to rest and recover some injuries, kind of, lick the wounds and get better there. For our final 5, we've got, of course, the largest outdoor cocktail party, Florida, Georgia, not Georgia, Florida. Although UF
That's
is
right.
the home team this year. We got Kentucky. We got Ole
No, we're
Miss.
we're we're the home team this year.
Correct, correct. Yep, yep.
Oh, I
Although we
got
are
you,
the home
because that's
team,
why you were
right?
saying Florida. I got you. I got you. I got
Right,
you.
right, right, right.
Yep, yep.
So tough game either way. I don't know what's going to happen. Is the field going to hurt us again, literally and figuratively? Hopefully
Always,
not.
always, always. Thank God we're
Right.
getting 2 years out of that place for the next 2 seasons after this
Yes.
game.
At least. So I don't know how our chances are, but I have to think with Georgia how tough they played, Ole Miss, especially how tough they played Alabama. Georgia's going to come in, and like you said, Kirby always has that edge about him, right?
Yep,
About Florida. So I can't say I'll put that one as a win. I'm gonna chalk that one up as a loss. UF Kentucky. I'm going to echo your sentiments from years ago. We shouldn't be losing to Kentucky ever. They're a basketball school. It's Kentucky. Okay, end of story. That
yep,
one I've got us as a win. UF against Ole Miss and the Lane train, right? That
yep.
game in Oxford. Lane knows what we did to him last year by derailing their CFP hopes. Trinidad Chambliss, JUCO last year, star this year. There's not a lot of film on him. It'll be interesting to see how we contain him because, as we know, our defense kind of has an issue with running quarterbacks. I'll leave
Yep.
it there. I'm going to
Correct.
chalk that up as a loss. Tennessee, some things come out of the Tennessee camp as far as some inefficiencies with Aguilar. Yeah, he started off the season very strong. Not sure what that's going to do, but again, Tennessee is playing Florida at the Swamp. Tennessee does not have a good record at the Swamp. I'm going to put our Gators there to win that one. And then FSU against Florida. Again, coming back to the Swamp for that. We know what's happened the past couple years. They don't have Jordan Travis anymore. But outside of that, we know that the Gus bus is running low on fumes right now. It has a misfire and it's got some gap issues, literally and
and
figuratively. Tommy,
and four flat tires.
exactly. B and I made this reference a few weeks ago. Tommy Castellanos, tough kid, strong kid, whatever. But that type of offense requires a lot out of the quarterback physically, mentally, more physically. And Tommy's been banged up, let's face it.
Yep.
So
Yep.
with that, I have us as a win. So for the record, I have us finishing up 3-2, B. Is that what you wanted to hear?
I mean, ditto. That's literally exactly what I have.
Oh,
Which
okay.
is crazy because again, we do not talk about this stuff beforehand.
No,
That's
no, no,
literally
no, no.
that is the exact same picks that I have. The same record, same wins and losses, to a T. So that's interesting. I really wanted to get aggressive here and pick us
Yeah.
to go 4-1. I wanted to find another win in there, but I can't do it without the data. I think I have enough faith and confidence in this team and the talent and the potential, right, to pick us to win those 3 games. But I haven't seen enough on film for us to say that I think we can win one of these other two. Here's what I'll say: the one we have the best shot at pulling of all of these, in my opinion, is this week. If we're going to
Okay.
go 4-1, it's this week that we get it. And it's not because I want it more, even though I do. But the reason why is the potential is there because there's no film on any of
Shock
it,
and awe.
right? This is where you get to pull out the stops. You get to run the stuff that nobody's seen you run, and there's zero research that anybody can do. Right now, Georgia doesn't watch film until the third quarter anyway. We know this, right? Because they don't play any defense till the fourth quarter. We've seen the evidence of this. But then it's a joke, but kind of, because you go back and you look, and that's how they've beaten a lot of teams this year.
Oh yeah.
But what I would say is that they would literally have to do that in this game if we did pull out the stops, because there's no film that exists if that's what we were actually going to do. So if this team does, or if this new staff changes do take advantage of the opportunities that are before them, this is the game where you can maximize that advantage, right? More than any other, because there's no film that exists on what we could potentially do as a play calling, play design unit, right? So here's your opportunity to strike. Let's take advantage of it. So fingers crossed, but my picks are 3-2, wins against Kentucky, Tennessee, and FSU, just like you. So there you go. All right.
To be honest with you, I thought you were going to go 2-3. So you did surprise me.
No, I went 3-2. Kentucky is a layup this year. There's no reason we should lose that game. Tennessee at home, I agree it could be a problem, but it's Tennessee in the swamp, man. 2003. It's 25 years. It's 23 years of history at this point. I don't think they're doing it. I just don't think this team's not. Again, they've been inconsistent, right? And again, Roberts knows how to defend this team pretty well. The only thing that concerns me there, I will throw in a caveat there. If this secondary can't get healthier by that game, we do have a problem because we could get smoked deep in that game, and that is an issue. So that is the one. But other than that, and then FSU, the way they're playing now, I would have been more worried 3 weeks ago. But now, no, we should get that one. So, all right. With that, keep it or pitch it for Uga. Let's do it. So, UGA ranks number 32 in the nation. And by the way, these ranks are from prior to this week. So they were based on week 8 data, not week 9 data. So if they could be a little off on the rankings, but this is where they were then. So, but the stats, the numbers are correct because, of course, they had a bye this week as well. So they ranked 32 in the nation, or did, at 19.57 points per game allowed. Very similar to Florida's point production. Florida will break the streak of not scoring more than 20 against the Bulldogs in the past 4 years. That's right, everybody. We have not scored more than 20 on Georgia since 2020 and put up at least 27 points on Saturday. So this is calling for that offense and that play design to break out and really get over that number. Keep it or pitch it.
Wow.
So do we hit 27?
Do we hit 27? B, I want to keep it, but I'm going to pitch it.
I'm keeping it. I think we do. I think we do enough that we can get there. I don't think it's over that. I think it's like at 27 or 28. Like I think it's right at that number. But I think we get there. I think the offense can do enough in this game to get to that. I think that number is absolutely attainable. And I think we'll do enough offensively to be able to do that and throw enough at them. And again, Georgia has been slow to react in games. I think it comes early. I'm not saying that makes us win, though it could, but I don't think it makes us win necessarily. But I think we get enough points on the board early that we hit this number. All right, number 2.
Okay.
UF ranks number 33 in rushing defense. So this is super interesting that we have this on here based on the Sims results. We get to it later.
Yeah.
33 in rush defense at 117.7 yards per game allowed, while UGA ranks tied for 37th in the nation with 190.6 yards per game average rushing. The Gators defense will hold the line and keep the Dogs under 150 yards per game rushing, or excuse me, not per game, 150 yards rushing in the game on Saturday. Keep it or pitch it.
Yeah, I think Gunner is the run game's important for him to open up the pass, to get him more comfortable, so on and so forth. And I just love what our line is going to do, especially if we can get 2 pieces back. Even if we don't get those 2 pieces back, I still take our linebacker core to see what they're capable of doing, of plugging up some gaps, doing some different things. I'm going to keep the number, B. I'm keeping
Yep, me too. I'm keeping that number as well. Now, we'll get to a number in a minute that I think is potentially more significant, at least possibly, as to whether or not we could actually win this game, and it's not that one, but I do think we keep them under 150. But we'll talk about that in a minute. All right. Last but not least, the current spread. So not something we typically talk about, but the current spread, or at least it was when we were looking at this, and it was this morning actually when I looked at it, so I think it's still accurate, for the cocktail party is favoring UGA by 7.5 points. Florida will keep this matchup closer than the last several, win or lose, and cover the spread. Keep it or pitch it.
Keep it.
Oh,
Keep it.
confidently. All
I'm
right.
keeping it.
Oh man, I'm really
Only because,
vacillating on this one. Go
only
ahead, tell me your
because
why.
I love the fact that you mentioned earlier there's no film. We don't know what's capable. We don't know what's possible. We've had 2 weeks to work on it. Okay, 2 weeks.
Yep,
Yes. Now, importantly enough, Georgia's coming off of a bye week as well. So Georgia
always.
has two
We
weeks to
always both
prepare.
are.
Exactly. So they're going to get healthy. They're banged up. They're this, they're that, whatever. But there is zero film on what we have to offer other than the 8 plays that we know that we run in perpetuity.
Yeah,
so,
right.
so outside of that, I
Hey,
think
hey,
DJ,
it's 12. It's 12 plays. It's
12?
12 plays.
Sorry, 12. But either way, I think DJ's got a lot to prove, especially with how he left last year's game. And so
Yes.
I think that's a hidden
Yep.
chip that you're going to find in this game that might be the edge.
So I absolutely agree with you on that, and I had that exact same thought, and I'm going to keep it as well. I think we can get within that
Okay.
spread line. Yeah, I'm going to keep it also. So I'm keeping all three, which would indicate to you that I actually think we are going to win this game.
Yeah.
However, I don't know for sure. I do think this is really close. I think it's as close as it's been in a long time. Now, this is assuming there's things we don't know here. So I don't know who we're all going to get back healthy. If we do not get some of the secondary pieces that we're missing against Mississippi State back, if we don't get, some of the potentially, I'd like to see VB3 back. And I'd
Sure.
also like to see Jacoby Jackson back for this game, at least in some capacity. I don't think he's a must, but I'd like to see him get back. We need to get some health returning to this roster. We've had way too many people out. I know we're not getting McCray back yet. I know we're not getting Banks back yet, right? There's going to be still some key pieces that are going to be out still for this game. Dejon Johnson, of course, is still out. He's probably
Yeah.
done for the season. So there's several guys we know we're not getting back yet, but like we need Cormani back for this game. We need hopefully Devin Moore back for this game. If we don't have those two guys back, really both of them, we have a problem here. Like I changed some of my picks. Like I
Like
don't
you
think we're
said, the
covering the spread
secondary.
anymore, right? So
Yeah.
I'm making some assumptions about some guys that I think we're going to get back here. Because we've got to have help on the back end here because they will torch us if we don't have some of those guys able to play and match up in coverage. It will be a problem. So we'll see what happens. But ultimately, that is a factor. But I am making some assumptions in regards to that. But anyway, moving along. All right, Sims results. Interesting stuff here. 4-6, same as last year. Interestingly, we also finished 4-6 in the results last year. I went back and looked. But even more interestingly is we won one of those with a -4 turnover margin. Huh? But I went and looked, and it actually kind of made some sense, believe it or not. Interestingly, additionally, we averaged more total yards per game than UGA did in all 10 matchups if you average it out, 445 to 431. But
Huh.
we had a 7 less point average per game than they did. Not 7.5, 7.3 if I want to be specific. So it's very aligned with Vegas's line, interestingly. They don't talk to one another. So
Hey,
super interesting how that came out. Perhaps because of the turnovers was why that happened, though, because we significantly had more turnovers consistently, a more deficit margin than an advantage. I think we only had an advantage in 2 games.
hmm
And then it was either neutral or us as a minus, and much more often we were at a minus. There were actually 2 -4 turnover margin games. One we won, as I mentioned. The other one we got smoked. So just interesting results from this. Overall, however, the key stat, and it took me a while to come up with this. I actually consulted Randy on this for what we were going to come up with.
Oh, sure.
Is holding UGA
Well,
to
sure.
to 70% or below of their average rushing yards per game on the season. So we talked about could we keep them under 150? We actually need to keep them under 135. So ideally, about 130 or below is going to be your key here. And that's going to be hard to do, right? This is a good running team. Obviously, they average 190 a game. Can we keep them at 132-ish or less? Because if we can do that,
hmm
I think we can actually win. That's
Key
going to
stat.
be your
There
key
it
stat.
is.
That's going to be your key stat because in every one of these games, we kept their rushing yardage total very low, but this actually had them rushing much less effectively against us than they had been versus their actual number. So we used their real number rather than what the game calculated their number at because I didn't trust that as being viable. So that's what we're coming up with. So we'll see if that holds true. It's been getting a lot better on these results. We're 2 games in a row now where the predicted outcome has been right, though that I'm not as worried about in this game because obviously kind of all bets are off with the new staff. But what I'm interested to see is does the predictive stat come out right? Because that's been 2 games running that we've hit that
Yeah.
number and the result has been correct accordingly. So we'll see what happens. With that, we're going to wrap this thing up and sign us off here. We are going to, of course, have a reaction to the game with our first bites after the conclusion there on Saturday. So we will
Hmm.
bring you our thoughts immediately after and then come back with that following the game on Saturday. So with that, I will turn it over to you to give your last thoughts here and sign us off, Randy.
Yeah, man. Looking forward to Florida, Georgia 2025. We'll do first bites after that. Then, of course, the following Monday, the night of the 3rd, we'll do our breakdown analysis of that. Gator Nation, we appreciate you. Thanks y'all for tuning in, listening, subscribing, following, sharing,
Yes.
all that stuff that you do. So spread the word, spread it loud, spread it far. Not to sound like famous Jameis, but whenever you are, wherever you may be listening, thank you for taking the time, and we will see you around Gator Nation.